Let's talk about the Marvels.
Okay.
Um, have we talked about the Marvels at all here? So the
Nope.
Marvels is the latest installment to the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yep.
Um,
We normally talk about Loki here, but only because of the Jonathan
Jonathan
Majors
Majors,
connection
right?
and the updates like that. We also have discussed the changes that Marvel has made, which they made more changes just the other day. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, uh, so that's usually how Marvel comes up
Yeah,
on this podcast, on this platform. We don't really review the Marvel movies here or any of that.
right.
It's not really our thing on this platform.
It's not our thing, but
But there is a lot to discuss surrounding the latest film.
right.
So go ahead, take it away.
A lot going on surrounding this movie. I mean, we know we've talked recently about all of the changes that have been happening with Marvel, so there's that.
Right?
There's a lot of eyeballs on Marvel right now.
For various reasons.
Exactly, and this one was well. I felt like this one was particularly special
Okay.
because most of the cast is comprised of women, which
Yep.
I thought was great. It's directed by a black woman, Nia DaCosta. It's starring three women. Two of the leads are women of color. So I was really excited about it. I mean, I've been keeping up with Marvel, so I know the backstory. So I was like, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be interesting. The unfortunate thing that happened is that it became the lowest grossing Marvel film in history.
Ever.
Yeah,
Yep.
which is really tough to say. I mean, and and of all the films, I'm just sad that it had to be this one. I mean, listen, it may not be the lowest forever, but right now, right now it is. But I guess the question out there is why.
Well, I think there's a lot of reasons why. I
Mm-hmm.
think we have to couple in a couple of things. We have to consider a few things. As we know, the strikes were going on.
Mm-hmm.
It was not promoted the way it should have been, which is weird because there were films that were really well promoted
Mm-hmm.
during this time, or during that time, I should say.
That you had to get permission for some of them.
Sure,
You know.
but it wasn't really promoted the way it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that.
Yeah.
Then you have the fact that there is a group of Marvel fans,
Mm-hmm.
not comic book fans, but MCU fans, fans of what's been going on the last 10 or 15 years, whatever it is now, uh, who feel there is a big push happening to put women in the front of Marvel
Mm-hmm.
since Phase 3 ended. It has been donned the name FemCU by those fans, and
Mm-hmm.
some people feel that it's overkill. There's been a lot of push for women to be in the forefront. You have a lot of introductions of new characters, characters rising to the top. It seems to some people, not me, but it seems to some people that Marvel is not allowing us to go through this without making sure there's a woman in front of our face all the time. That's the view. And so some people feel it's been overkill.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have a woman centered film completely. And sure, Nick Fury is in it, and we knew that, but it
Right.
doesn't really make much of a
I mean,
difference.
he's wrangling cats, so.
Right, which is a whole nother topic. And the last component is the level of interest.
Mm-hmm.
You have three characters who people don't have a large investment in.
Yeah.
And that's not opinion. That's just what it is, right? You have Captain Marvel, who was introduced at the end of Phase 3.
Mm-hmm.
Her film, Captain Marvel, came out right before Endgame. And although it did very well box office wise, it really was because of marketing and positioning.
Mm-hmm.
It was positioned as a movie that you had to see to understand and see Avengers Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything happened with Infinity Wars. Everybody was on this high of, oh God, what happens next? Half the people are gone. Thanos won. This is crazy. And so it's positioned as whatever's going to happen in Endgame,
Mm-hmm.
You won't understand unless you see Captain Marvel.
Right.
But that didn't mean people gave a fuck about Captain Marvel. They just had to see Captain Marvel.
Right.
And so we haven't seen Captain Marvel since. Then you have Monica Rambeau, who they introduced in WandaVision.
Mm-hmm.
WandaVision has a split as far as people feel, MCU fans, excuse me. MCU fans either completely love it or completely hate WandaVision. It was a weird ass show.
Yeah.
And Monica Rambeau was not even one of the main characters of that show. She's a mid to low level character.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't seen her since, right? And so there's not a lot of investment there. And then Miss Marvel, her show was a teeny bopper show. It's a show
Right.
really that kids were excited about,
Yeah.
not many adults. And making it personal, I only went to see the Marvels because my daughter wanted to see it. If not, I'd have been happy skipping it. And so I think when you put those three things together, FemCU overkill, not being promoted properly, and the low investment
Mm-hmm.
level that people have with the characters, that's those could possibly be the reasons why when you put those things together. Because even the villain, it wasn't like they brought Loki back or they brought back one of the big villains from early on, so that way we were invested. Like even Ant-Man and the Wasp, again,
Mm-hmm.
they made sure it's no longer Ant-Man, it's Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, which is now the second lowest grossing film, which came out earlier this year. Even that film struggled because, yeah, people know Ant-Man, people know the Wasp, but like, whatever. And then Kang was just introduced. It wasn't a big investment in this character yet, and even him being the centered villain, we didn't really know what it was going to be like.
Mm-hmm.
And so even that, speaks to the struggles of the film. I think if they had a villain that we knew, like, oh, the Red Scroll is back, the Red Skull is back, not
Mm-hmm.
Scroll, sorry, the Red Skull is back, or Loki is back, or I don't know, I'm freestyling, but some other villain that we knew, it would make audiences want to see it more. Even the villain in the Marvels, nobody knew who that was until we watched the movie.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
Like,
also a woman.
also a woman. And so I think when you pair those things together, it speaks to possibly why the numbers were so low.
Mm-hmm.
According to Bob Iger, Disney's favorite guy, there just weren't enough executives involved in this film, which I think is foul.
I've I've heard some criticism about it being too, I guess, along with it being feminist forward, um, that it's also woke. It feminism gets roped into. First of all, never mind. We don't have to talk about how white people have co-opted woke, but
They have.
white conservatives have co-opted the term woke,
Yep.
which and turned it into something that it completely never meant.
Correct.
And so one of the top ones,
Yeah.
you know, name rhymes with Len Shadero.
Yeah.
He has some thoughts about it too. First of all, you know what confuses me about these people? Why did you go see it?
Or did he see it?
Or why is it even on your radar? Like, why does it even matter to you?
It's a good question.
Because he was also very he had very strong feelings about Barbie, which was like very in your face, against the patriarchy, pushing forward feminism and women and centering women. That was very clear there.
Yes.
And he ripped it to shreds.
I can see why.
And
I can see why someone with his core audience and core beliefs would do so.
right. And listen, everybody is entitled to their opinion, and everybody is free to, do what they want to do, be a bigot if they want to be one, and that's it. But it's like I'm confused because I think people get a little wrapped up in the efforts that are made to try to center people who are not typically centered.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's women, sometimes it's black people, sometimes it's people of color, sometimes whatever, right? Whoever, I should say. But I think sometimes we get a little caught up in that and forget that in order to balance the scales, you kind of have to, right? Like you can't just you can't just throw a woman in there once and then say, okay, we did it. You have to be able to balance the scales. Now, I think, and you talked about comic book purists, and I think this is where I'm in favor. There is a piece of me that is in favor of comic book purists because
Okay.
I'm someone who likes to read a book and then go see the film that is about the book. And when they ruin the integrity of the book, I don't like that, right? When they completely change the book or something like that, I don't like it. I watch The Read a lot, and Kid Fury often talks about, he's a big gamer, and he often talks about how conservatives get really angry, conservative gamers get really angry because people who are not normally centered get centered there. It's same stuff. They have trans people. There's all kind, like whoever, and there's this anger and there's this hatred for us trying to people trying to balance the scales. I think it really sucks that it happened with this film because I saw it, and no, is it my favorite Marvel film? Did it have all the action scenes I've loved? Did it have all my favorite characters in it? No, but I think it had value. I think that yes, there is something to be said about seeing three women come together and fight the bad guy, and men tend to get centered as the superhero a lot more often. So I think it's okay for I think it's okay for us to have that type of content. But I also realize that if you are someone who is really into the comics and that's just not the way it went, I can totally understand being frustrated with that. What I can't understand is the people who are like, "Oh, well, fuck women, so why are we doing this?"
Yeah, I think there's a few different ways to look at it. With the MCU, with any of these films, DC, Marvel, no matter the company, you can't be a comic book purist
Oh.
because they have completely changed everything from the comics. Every time they make a movie, even when they say this movie will be based off this comic, it's really not.
Mm-hmm.
They might keep the core parts of it, but they're gonna change a lot of it. They're
Yeah.
probably changing 60% of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so it's hard to be a comic purist in this age. It's honestly better if you're not, because you're going to be driving yourself crazy watching this stuff. Or it's better to be a comic purist and just not watch any of this stuff.
You could end up
Um,
stumbling upon something that you actually find interesting that wasn't there the first time you read the comics, you know?
what happens when you've read the comic is, especially when they say it's going to be based off the comic or they name the thing the same as the comic, you now have an expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is you show up with the expectation and they don't meet the expectation at all. They change 60-70% of
Yeah,
the
and
story,
that's a lot.
the details. It's like, why'd you even name it this?
Right.
Like, if you make a movie about thing A, then it has to be about thing A. Like, you can't say we're making the story of how Dash started the Hardly Minding My Business podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And they start off by making Dash a white woman with red hair. And then instead of being a single woman, Dash has a husband and three kids. You're like, this is not the story of Hardly Minding My
You
Business.
said that to upset me, didn't
I said that to make a very specific, to give a very specific, weird, strange, total opposite example, because that's what happens a
you?
lot of
Right.
times.
Yes, that is true.
And so the story might be the same. How you changed the podcast, how you used to
Right.
do it with someone else, and how you changed the name and where it is now, and all of those changes. And so those core pieces may be right, but you're watching the movie like, this don't even make sense. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there was no husband involved in the movie. They make your husband come up with the name of the podcast. You're a single black woman with no kids. I mean, how could your husband be who gives you the name of the podcast? And
Right.
so that would be frustrating, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
saw that. And so that's what happens when you're a comic book purist. You go and you have these expectations, and they basically shit all over the thing they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
So it's better to not be a purist. As far as trying to balance the scales, I don't have a problem with stuff like that. Like I thought Barbie was awesome. I thought Barbie being in your face was awesome. I saw it recently and I thought it was great.
Look at you watching
Um,
Barbie.
yeah, I watched it recently. It was good. I actually called my daughter and was like, "Why did you not like this? This was awesome." I think she needs to watch it again. Um, but Marvel's was not Barbie.
No.
The Marvels was not pushing feminism, was not talking about patriarchy, was not doing the quote unquote woke stuff that even what the whites have flipped woke to mean, it was not that. This was
No.
not a feminist, liberal, conscious film. This is just supposed to be a fun film where three women heroes are centered and life lessons are learned and
Mm-hmm.
friends are made and regrets are fixed and all of those things. And so
And by
that's a baseless claim. To say
right.
those things is whack to me, and that's one of the things I take issue with in this age of content creation. It's very easy to make baseless claims without evidence, and for someone like me, that's challenging to watch or be a part of, because I like that's debate 101. In debating 101, not literally, but like in learning debate and learning anything surrounding legalities, you're taught to uh, use evidence to support whatever claim you have.
Right. Yeah.
Like you can't say, "Oh man, Starbucks coffee is messing up my stomach." Okay, and then how often have you had Starbucks coffee in the last 30 days? Oh, I had it once. No, then that's just it doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah.
So that's a little hard for me. But I think there are a lot of components to why this film did not do well.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's unfortunate that it didn't do well. I think MCU would benefit from creating situations that people are more invested in rather than just throwing out randomness.
Yeah, they need to focus on cultivating certain stories. Not all of them, because some of them have been,
Yeah.
but the ones that haven't, and they're trying to center those characters, it would be helpful to maybe not just see them in like an end credit scene or something like that, but actually see their story get fleshed out and interwoven into the other stories that are happening before theirs.
Yeah, because when
So
you just throw someone out as the star, it's like how much success can you really have?
yeah.
We don't even really know these characters like that. So why would we run to go see them and their film?
Now I think that Marvel, I've said this to you off pod. I think that the people who are involved with Marvel, the people who write these stories, obviously it's based on the comics, so it's not coming from nowhere. But I think the fact that there are actual people in this world who can weave stories together in the way that Marvel has woven these stories together, I think is pretty incredible. Dare I say genius.
I agree.
But I think that at some point they lost their way. And as I said, the stories kind of got a little disjointed. And it's probably all makes sense in the end, right? And
We'll
you
see.
probably know this way better than I do, but because you actually know comics,
Somewhat.
I don't.
My
I
specialty is DC, not Marvel.
comics for me, like when people say comics, I think like Garfield and Kathy and whatever was in the Daily News. Um,
Yeah. Those are,
that was I used to read
those
the
are comic strips,
sure,
but they are comics.
but they're comics,
Yep.
and I used to read the comic strips every single day for many years. So that is the extent to my I don't know any and okay, that's not totally true because my cousins when I was younger, my cousins were very much into all of that. So, you know, they were into anything like that. They were into the comic books, they were into playing cards, they were into like trading cards and baseball cards and things like that. They were into all of that stuff, the video games, everything. So, I was exposed to it a little bit, but not in any big way. So, but from what I've seen after having binged the entire universe, I I've seen that some things kind of got like stuck in the middle, like in between other things. Like we have a good cadence going for a while, and then there's this random thing that you watch and you're like, what does this have to do with everything else? Because you've told me that these things are connected. And now I'm like, hey, what were those people's names? Not the Marvels.
The Eternals.
The Eternals. The Eternals came and I was like, okay, what are you guys doing here? I mean, they come up later, but I'm just saying, like, it got disjointed at some point. So, I mean, if anybody's listening to us, I just feel like let's get back on track, because I think that this is genius level stuff that we have going on here. I don't think that any and everybody can sit in a room and figure out how to, you know, crochet the whole thing together. I don't think it's not for play.
I think the other thing too, which I just remembered as you were talking, is there's some superhero fatigue going on for movie watchers.
Mm-hmm.
Partially because of the last 4 or 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the big blockbuster films that you may have looked forward to before have been shelved, don't exist,
Mm-hmm.
put on hold.
Yeah.
There's no James Bonds. There's no, I mean, the Fast and Furious movies are still coming out, but a lot of
And
these
should
things
they be?
that's another topic for another time. A lot of the things that we might be excited about, heard about, we're looking forward to in the last couple of years, they've either been shelved, canceled, or went directly to streaming.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the big movies have been superhero movies, even during lockdowns.
Yeah.
And so I think that also plays a part because even if you're a fan of superhero movies, there's not a ton of other fly shit coming out.
Yeah.
First, it was COVID. They didn't know if they wanted to, the studios, not the fans and the moviegoers, but the studios didn't know what they wanted to put out, what they wanted to hold on to, what they wanted to put on streaming. COVID died down, but movie theaters didn't fully recover.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like once things started getting into a good flow again, strikes. And then kind of back to square one because what can we put out? What can't we put out? What can we promote?
Mm-hmm.
What can't we promote? And so I think also that is part of it where some people are like, all right, but y'all ain't got no fly non-superhero shit. You ain't got like just a cool detective movie. You ain't got like some cool spy shit. You don't got a suspense thriller for me. Like, where's all the other shit? And I don't feel that way, but that's how some people feel. And so I think superhero fatigue also has to be taken into consideration here.
Yeah. Well, good luck to everyone on their future endeavors.
I should have known that was coming.
There's another movie we got to talk about.
What might that be?
Saltburn.
Saltburn. Yo, Saltburn is wild.